Well, good morning there, Todd.
Good morning.
Oh, still got it. You still got it. Even after all the rehearsing.
Yes, that was good morning.
Yeah, good morning. That'll wake you up.
It is Memorial Day weekend right now. I mean, probably not when people are listening to this, but it is Memorial Day weekend for us. Thank you.
Yeah, how has your Memorial Day weekend been so far?
It is going swimmingly. We had a beautiful podcast yesterday with Susan Hayward. Today, we have a great, wonderful guest who we'll introduce in a couple seconds. But what have you been up to since yesterday?
Well, since yesterday, I mean, we kind of did a short intro last time. So just to let everybody know, I keep referencing in the past 2 podcasts that I met at Embassy Suites. And that is because I came up here for a concert on Friday to see a Halsey concert and then realized that we had 2 podcasts back to back. So I just made a whole, I moved into the Embassy Suites.
You have a little studio there.
This is what and you can't stand looking at it anymore. So I had to blur my background.
Can we please tell everybody about the Embassy Suites you are staying in? Because it sounds like in Charlotte, North Carolina, we're calling you out. Y'all need to do some renovations.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit of updating. We need a little
updating. It is like 1995 threw up behind Laura.
Oh my God, it is. And throwing up is the perfect way to put it, because
are those yellow walls behind? I can't. It's blurred now.
Yes, it's he made me blur it, so you can't even see it. But yes, they're yellow walls, and all of the chairs are at least at ankle level. So I am propped up on a bunch of pillows right now. And this is my first on the road.
You still continue to sink.
Yeah, it's
the chair.
It's still happening. I am slowly getting shorter as we talk. But no, I literally during that yesterday, you were saying to me, stop moving. I was like, I can't. Like, I'm literally sitting on a waterbed on this chair.
But you said there's NASCAR. There's a NASCAR convention going on.
Yes, there's we're right next to the Speedway. We were not aware that was going on. But yes, there's I wouldn't call it a convention. It's got a name, but there's a big race going on. And so it's been a very interesting experience. I will say kudos to Embassy Suites for their breakfast. They're nailing it. They're doing the Lord's work with the best they got. I mean, but also, like, y'all should help them. Whoever the head of Embassy Suites, come to Charlotte, North Carolina. Just do a little secret shopping, see what's going on. But otherwise, it's been a delightful experience, and it proved to me that I can be on the move with the podcast.
Well, and it's interesting because you're probably more attuned to it anyways because you're in hospitality. So
yes, that
shit pops right out at you.
It's honestly it's kind of obnoxious. Like, you go to like a restaurant and it's like the first thing you notice is like, how many minutes has it been since somebody came and said a word to us or this. I'm really guilty of finding just grammatical errors in menus and not being able to get over that. So yeah, you're right. It's kind of like, who am I to say that? I'm a little bit too biased here, but they're doing great. They're doing great, and Charlotte is great. And
I love these. They're doing the Lord's work. With the breakfast. Love that. I love that journey for you.
Not much else to do here. So,
well, today we have a wonderful guest on the program today.
Oh, we do. Yes, we do.
Mr. Matthew Gardiner. He was pretty great. The interview was good. It was forward-thinking, honest.
I mean, it definitely was, I think, more insightful for me than maybe you, just because it was kind of, we got to know what it was like to grow up as a gay man. And as we discussed before,
in the late 80s, early 90s, it was just a different time.
Yeah, but it's just and now it's kind of dawning on me too that was the height of the AIDS pandemic. I mean, like, epidemic and all of that going on. So that extra level of kind of.
Well, that was happening more in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, but people remembered.
People were still dying, and there was it Nixon? I think it was Nixon who wouldn't say a word about it. People were dying and nothing was being done. Anyway, we're going to introduce now Matthew Gardiner.
Yes.
So Matthew is a director, choreographer, producer, and arts leader residing in Washington, D.C., where he is the artistic director of Signature Theater. The Washington Post has called him, quote, one of the top young musical theater directors in the land, unquote. At Signature, Matthew has directed over 25 productions and has a strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and honing the theater's anti-racist practices as well as his own. Matthew is the recipient of 3 Helen Hayes Awards for Outstanding Director of a Musical and has been honored with over a dozen nominations. He holds a BFA in directing from Carnegie Mellon University and is a member of the Society for Stage Directors and Choreographers. Pretty accomplished guy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I'd say that's quite the resume.
So without further ado, Matthew Gardiner.
Matthew. Good morning,
Good morning.
Matthew.
Hello, hello.
Welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Trying to enjoy this Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, yeah. You got any big plans?
No, just like actually trying to chill out and relax and spend some time with family. So it's been pretty chill.
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, we're happy to have you on the program. We're gonna go ahead and dive right into this. So, can you tell us a little bit about your journey within the entertainment industry? How did you become involved with the arts, and did you grow up knowing you wanted to be in the arts?
Yeah. So from my earliest memories involved the theater and doing dance and singing, and so I, at a very early age, wanted to be a ballet dancer. That quickly gave way to choreography, which gave way to directing. And so this has been my sort of path since I was like 5 years old.
Really? 5? So did your parents kind of get you into it, or did you like demand to be involved?
My parents were computer programmers. So
Oh my
like
goodness.
literally the antithesis of artistic people. And both my twin brother and I, my mom was a big jock, a big athlete. So she was swimming and playing soccer, and she has 2 little twin boys, and she thinks everybody's like they're gonna go into being jocks. And
Yeah.
we both ended up in the arts.
Oh, so your twin also ended up in the arts.
He is, yeah. He's a
it must be
wonderful.
genetic.
He started as an actor and a writer, and now does a bunch of film video content.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you've obviously been doing this a while, and you just mentioned that you started with ballet. So what led you to kind of move into the directing aspect and leave the performing aspect?
Yeah, I mean, I was very serious about being a ballet dancer until I was about 16 years old. Like, I studied at the Washington Ballet. I spent my summers studying with Suzanne Farrell. Like, I was dead set on being a ballet dancer. And then there was something when I was around 16 or 17 that just said it was too technical for me. It was too much about sort of being a robot and hitting the marks. And I felt a lack of autonomy, right, in my creative process. And so that led me to choreography, which just sort of theater was always a part of my world. And so that led to directing.
Cool. As far as like, do you see a big difference between the performing aspect and the directing, like in day-to-day life now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think
You like being in charge?
I like being in charge. I like looking at a bigger picture, and I think there are certain artists that like sort of digging into the specificity of a single role or a single point of view within a creative process. And for me, I'm much more excited by sort of like looking at the bigger picture and bringing all these varying viewpoints together.
Matthew, this podcast mainly is focused on healing and overcoming trauma and hardship. And so we spoke yesterday. Growing up as a gay man in Maryland, would you say it was difficult for you back then? And when did you know that you were different? And was your family supportive?
My family was amazing. I couldn't ask for a better set of parents and a better brother in terms of my coming out and my journey being gay. But that doesn't change the fact that I was a young gay man in the late 80s, early 90s, sort of like finding myself. And I think that there was, for me, focusing on these sort of movie musicals and escaping into these movie musical worlds was a very big part of finding myself and finding a place for myself in my journey as a young man. So I think that was very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, honestly, like, do you feel that, that getting into art was something that helped you kind of work through that trauma? And do you kind of believe that there are a lot of people in the whole art industry that are kind of doing the same thing. And you even mentioned escapism. Do you think that that's like healthy? Do you feel like it's like helped you?
Sure. I mean, yes, I do. I mean, I think that for me, it is what I needed to sort of like imagine a more gentle world, a world that felt more magical than the world that I was living in as a young gay kid who was bullied, who was picked on. So then to be able to like go home and close my bedroom door and pretend to be Judy Garland sitting on a haystack and singing about Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I mean, those were transformative things for me to sort of like imagine other worlds, more perfect worlds, was really important.
That's what Dan Levy said when he wrote Schitt's Creek, that he wanted to, that's why he imagined Schitt's Creek to be, because it's never really focused. Yeah, it's never really focused on that people are gay. That's what he wishes the world was
yeah, you just accept, that's a really good point. I'm obsessed with Schitt's Creek, and I've never really thought about that it's like kind of not even like a topic. It's just there and you just live in it. And, you know, I think in general, it seems like a lot of people, did you feel like once you came into the art world, like, these are my people, like this is where, I'm supposed to be. So it seems like a lot of camaraderie there.
Yeah. I think it's very telling that that there are, I don't know that I knew this as a 5-year-old, but like now there's a reason there are so many gay men working in musical theater and in theater. Like we're gravitating towards like-minded individuals, people that see the world in a similar way that we do. So that, again, I don't think I was aware of that when I was 5 years old. But
maybe you were. Maybe you were just
maybe I was.
Yeah, you were that self-aware at 5 years old, and you just knew that's where it was. So what did, in general, that, you know, kind of speaking of that whole, the LGBTQ community as a whole, do you kind of feel like there is a level that you've kind of reached? Like, I feel bad being the one asking this question, honestly, because I'm the only one on this situation that is not gay. But do you feel as though there's been enough change and movement forward that you've kind of succeeded in reaching what you would consider equality? And if not, like, what more do you think needs to be done to kind of bring that about?
I mean, I think the world has changed in miraculous ways for white gay men, cisgender gay men. Okay. I think that there is much. Can you elaborate on that, please? Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think 5-year-old Matthew could ever imagine sort of marriage equality, and I think that there has been much growth for white cisgender gay men.
Okay.
At least from my perspective. That doesn't mean that we are that bullying doesn't still happen. That doesn't mean that it's still not a hard road for a young white gay man in this world. But I do think that when you look at sort of the journey of what it was like in the early 90s for me and what it is like for a young gay man right now, I think it has changed. Yeah, well, there's a bit more acceptance.
And do you remember back then, because I'm right there with you, same time period growing up. Do you? I think the only thing that I remember seeing on television and being really like kind of like, oh, there is hope, was when Ellen came out on television in her show. That was kind of the only.
That was a big deal. Even
that was a huge deal.
Yeah. I mean, Will and Grace was. Grace was massive for me as in high school, and Ellen was huge, and Queer as Folk. I used to like sneak into our basement and watch Queer as Folk.
Queer as Folk.
You snuck into your basement to watch it? You couldn't watch it out in the open?
Well, that was a little too risque for my parents.
Really? Oh, yeah. I guess it was a little bit like maybe you were too young in general. It doesn't matter if you were. Yeah. I did that too, especially with MTV.
Yeah, there you
go. Well, speaking of identity, you are a twin, as you mentioned earlier. And can you speak to what it is like growing up as a twin, and what is something that you think is sort of unique to the twin experience?
Sure. Yeah. So I have a twin brother named James. And I mean, I think it is hard for me to speak to like what is different about somebody who is a twin and somebody who isn't, because my only
real fast. I know this is I hate to interrupt, but real fast. Are y'all fraternal or identical?
We're identical.
Oh
for
my goodness,
example.
you
So,
are? Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
We could be interviewing James right now and not know it.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think as we have gotten older, it is fairly clear which one is which. But
Okay.
and he is straight. I am gay. Like there you can tell the difference between us. Yeah, I mean, growing up, I don't know. I think we are very close. Have been our whole lives. And I think that there's a degree to which, like, growing up, we were always the Gardiner brothers. We were never seen as individuals. We were always seen as sort of a unit. And even today, we're still sort of seen as a unit because we live near each other. We work at the same theater. Like, there's a degree to which,
y'all work
there's
together.
a degree to which there's a degree to which we're still seen as the Gardner brothers.
But maybe you being a ballet dancer, maybe that was your way back then of sort of like, this is who I am. Like, guys, this is what I do.
Well, and definitely when we went to college, I went to Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. He went to University of Maryland in College Park. And for a while there, like, we didn't call each other on the phone. We didn't email each other. There was a definite, like, couple of years there where it was like really about trying to become individuals after years of being seen as sort of a duo.
Well, it seems like you mentioned that he's kind of very supportive about coming out. In what ways did he kind of like support you? How did you feel so supported?
I mean, the big thing with my family is they just always knew, and they never
tell you?
Pressured me.
Did they?
No. They never, but like they sort of told, I mean, like they would ask James about his girlfriends. They would never ask me.
Oh, okay.
They were always just sort of like waiting for the moment for me to tell them. When I came out, my mother laughed at me, which was I was like, wait,
that
why?
sounds also
I was like,
fun, but maybe not.
Yeah. So she laughed at me and she said, not like, she wasn't laughing hysterically, but she was like, of course you are. And her response was, Matthew, you owned every Judy Garland album by the age of 10. Like,
you were really into Judy Garland then. Okay.
I was very into Judy Garland. And so there were a lot of stereotypes, like the young boy ballet dancer who loved Judy Garland and Gene Kelly and musical theater, and a lot of stereotypes there that my parents were like, clearly, this is, it wasn't a surprise.
What age were you when you finally kind of put it out there?
Came out?
Yes.
So I came out to my brother in like freshman year of college. It took a while to come out to my parents, but I was never hiding it. To me, it was like, well, there's not a boyfriend to introduce you to. So what are we talking about? So the reason I came out to my parents was because they were going to write an article in Metro Weekly, which is the gay paper in DC, about me being a gay director.
Yeah, you probably should get ahead of that.
Well, I should probably tell my parents.
I don't want them to see it in the paper before, even though they knew it was a courtesy.
I mean, again, it was one of those things. It was like, it wasn't like they didn't know. It just was something we didn't talk about.
Let's just clarify.
All
on the same page.
Yes, let's all get on the same page. So I from what Todd has told me, you're obviously an amazing director and have so much work under your belt, but I think a big thing that he really kind of imparted on me when we talked about interviewing you was that you're very passionate about equality and representation in casting and in your work in general. Where does that passion really stem from for you? And is it solely or partly or at all related to kind of being gay and growing up in that situation?
I mean, I think for me, and it has taken me a while to sort of clarify this for myself, but musical theater in particular, tells the story often of the outsider. I think that's why gay men see themselves in it. That, it tends to tell the story, whether it's Fiddler on the Roof or even, The Sound of Music, even, that like it's the person whose perspective is outside the norm, right?
Okay. That makes sense.
So to me, you can't tell those stories with just a group of white individuals, right? To tell those stories.
Some people try, but
they do. They do. And I think that there has been whitewashing of the intention of musical theater, that like there's a reason that the majority of these musicals were written by gay Jewish men. There is a reason that
Oh my God, I literally never thought about that.
I know.
Yeah.
I just had like I just wrote that down. I don't know why it like kind of blew my mind.
There's a reason, there's a reason that we gravitate towards stories, again, of the person who is outside of the status quo, outside of the norm. And that's what that's the reason I gravitated towards these stories. So that's why I always have to remind myself, like, why are you sharing these stories? And to me, it is to show the point of view of that is not the norm.
Yeah. Well, I noticed kind of stalking you on the internet, let's say research, that there was kind of a highlight of remaking a lot of musicals. And what kind of drew you to that? Like as like those specific ones, and which one was kind of like your favorite, I had to do it kind of one?
I mean, I think that when we think of the music, for me, like my favorite musicals are West Side Story and Cabaret and the stories, again, that are
I saw that production.
Challenging.
It was so good. Cabaret.
Oh, you saw it in person?
My God, yeah. Yes, I did. It was amazing. It was incredible.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I am interested in the stories that sort of illuminate our humanity and challenge the status quo. And so there are the reasons I'm attracted to like La Cage aux Folles and West Side Story and Cabaret, and because at the core, they're stories about viewing the world differently, right? Or breaking down oppressive practices, and so that's what really I am drawn to.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I think it's full circle. And I think it's really awesome that's an outlet for, I've never, like Todd said, I've never really thought about that is of every main character in a lot of those plays are that is their whole struggle. So, I mean, that's very illuminating.
Well, in your opinion, okay, let's shift gears a little bit. There was the big Me Too movement a few years ago, and the Time's Up movement and stuff like that. In your opinion, has the movement affected the musical theater community, specifically the musical theater community? And do you think there has been meaningful change? And do you see those changes on a day-to-day basis, if so?
I think it has to have impacted things. I think Me Too and the Time's Up movement goes well beyond the past 2 years. But if we're just speaking of like the past 2 years, it's been traumatic, right? We have gone through so much, from this pandemic to the racial reckoning with George Floyd, and then just the past week of,
oh my gosh, I was crying. I was crying
sobbing
before this interview, and I literally had to get myself together because it's just so heartbreaking. But yes, I'm sorry to interrupt that. It's just,
but then you're dealing with sort of the political landscape of people trying to take the bodily autonomy away from women and then not giving two shits. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse.
You are allowed to curse as much as you want on
about the children that are alive right now. So all of this trauma has to inform the way in which we behave in the rehearsal room right now, in the creative process. I mean, I think about like 5 years ago and how these conversations were sort of non-existent. And because of the Me Too movement, because of Time's Up, because of the pandemic, because of all of these things, trauma is much more at the forefront in all of our lives. Yeah. And so we have to really be aware and clear about the processes that we are creating that allow people to use that trauma, but not in a way that is going to be re-traumatizing to them or create an unhealthy, unsafe work environment. And so, again, I look at the way I operated 5 years ago and I look at the way I operate now, and we are much more,
do you think there's a sensitivity that you bring to it now that maybe 5 years ago it was always there, but maybe now you're way more aware of it?
To be honest, like for me personally, I didn't even go to therapy until 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. For me, that says a lot, I think, about the past couple of years.
Yeah. I think in order for me to be a better leader, I have to be more aware of my own trauma and the things that trigger me so that I am able to be centered and lead a room and be more aware. I think we are. I tend to think we are all more aware of it now than we had been in years past.
Well, I mean, that's always, obviously good to hear that there's progress going on. But you're also, you're in DC or right outside of DC currently, correct?
I live in DC.
Okay, so
my theater's right outside of DC in Virginia.
So do you feel like kind of the political climate of DC does affect the professional aspects of or even personally, like, do you feel it in the rehearsals? How is that like being right there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's extremely, again, I don't work a lot of other places, like DC and New York are the two spaces that I am inhabiting the most as a creative person. And I think that, you can't live in DC and work in DC without being constantly aware of and bombarded by the issues that we are all confronting and facing in this moment. Yeah. I think artists that live in DC just inherently are more activists. Like they're more driven by making change. So.
Well, that's awesome. I guess that kind of leads me to wondering if do you feel like a lot of your actors that are in your shows or just that you kind of surround yourself with try to use that platform to be vocal about, basically making that change? And do you feel like that? I know you said that you don't go a lot of other places. However, I did see on your website that you went to Seoul, Korea. So, you've been some places
I have.
that you think that there might be a little bit more of a shift there, being so close, like having kind of you're on the heartbeat of what's going on with kind of the nation and the direction. And do you think that there's a little bit of, I don't want to say like more enlightenment there? Because Todd, I'm sure LA, you're very enlightened, but
I don't know.
I mean,
we're starting to wonder with this podcast what is going on.
Sure. I think I'm careful in my answer to that because I do think also at times we live and work in a bubble that is not always aware of various perspectives. It is a very sort of liberal, woke, progressive perspective on the world, which I'm not complaining about that. That's my perspective on the world. But sometimes you have to be a little more aware of that you are speaking to a very specific bubble of the country. I mean, we talk right now about just very specifically about the pandemic and the way certain theaters that are in middle America are dealing with the pandemic, as opposed to in DC, there's just a very sort of, the people that are coming to the theater are liberal-minded people who still believe the pandemic is a thing, who still believe that we need to behave in certain ways. So it's a bit easier for us than it is for a theater maybe in Oklahoma that is trying to put forward like masking policies and things like that. Anyways.
Have you ever been in a rehearsal experience where you realized, oh, this person is a huge Trump supporter or whatever, or is a Republican, and like you have to completely shift what you're saying because of their political beliefs?
Oh, I'm not going to shift anything I'm saying.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's rare. Like, I think think there are people that are definitely Trump supporters, but I think they are more reserved in their sharing that information in a space that they know is extremely progressive and liberal.
Right.
So no, I can't speak to a specific instance where I tried to placate towards.
Yeah, after I asked the question, I was like, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, stupid question, Todd.
Sorry.
No,
dumb question. I said I went off script. I wanted to know.
No, it was a great question. I think it's for us, like especially for me being in South Carolina and Todd being from South Carolina, I do kind of feel like we have just a little bit of a unique perspective on things, because it's like in Charleston even it's so much more progressive than like the rest of the state. So even at times we can
Laura,
be in our own
downtown the metropolitan area of Charleston. You go outside of that and it's like ring a ding 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 ding.
I think I'm guilty of kind of living in this like downtown Charleston bubble. And then you go outside of it. I mean, currently I am in Charlotte, North Carolina, next to a NASCAR speedway race. And it's a little bit of a different world right now seeing that. But I think we all kind of have to admit that at a certain point that we put ourselves in a little bit of a bubble because it's almost too much. Yeah, it's almost too much to like absorb any of the hate or all of that. So I don't know, in a way, my thoughts and prayers go out to the theaters in Oklahoma. I hope y'all are doing okay.
Yeah.
Because that does not sound great. It was even hard down here or in Charleston to get people behind mask mandates in some areas. So it's definitely a wild world right now.
Right. And our union, Laura, the Actors Equity Union, they are very specific about rehearsal rules and wearing masks. And
good for them.
It creates a very safe thing moving through this pandemic. But Matthew, with so many, as a director, with so many shows under your belt, you're not only the literal leader of your productions, but you're a leader in the arts community. So do you feel that there are certain expectations placed upon you as a leader that you feel pressured to live up to? And how do you handle the stress of that pressure if there is sort of that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, I think I guess I feel a lot of pressure to live up to the expectations of that everyone has for our organizations in this moment, right? I think that there are expectations for an entire organization to respond in a certain way to something. And it's that balance between knowing what I want to say about something and the way I want to move through the world and how to address that as an organization, as an institution. So
yeah, do you ever feel like that you're having to speak for a whole group of people at a certain point? It's kind of like, well, I don't know if that. I mean, I know that you're surrounded by your people, if you will, of artistic, creative, progressive. But does it ever kind of feel like a lot to just be the voice?
Yeah, there are times that it feels. You don't want to just be reactionary. You don't want to just be performative. You want to be authentic in your response to something. And sometimes it can feel like you are sort of falling into just saying the right thing or being performative. And sometimes questioning, like, do I have the right to speak for an entire organization or am I just speaking for myself?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. It's definitely as somebody who runs several businesses, I sometimes am kind of whoa, this is a kind of a big thing going on. I really don't want to be the one that has to deal with it, but you have no option. Like you're there and that's your responsibility. And do you feel like a lot of your actors that work for you, kind of see you as that like father figure to come to and be, get advice and navigate the world?
Yeah, I think that, yes, I do think there with a certain level of power and leadership, there are expectations to lead, right? To have a point of view, to share that point of view. And that can be overwhelming at times, but there's also a real understanding that comes with the job, that comes with the responsibility.
Yeah, which you seem to, you were obviously gravitated to it from being a performer. Are there days that you miss performing? Like, do you ever just want to jump in there when? No, you don't at all.
Oh, that is a hard no.
Not
at all. For those of you listening, that was a hard shake.
Yeah, it was a lot of head shaking there. Yeah.
Yeah, I did one day. This was 10 years ago, but there was a performance where the understudy couldn't go on and the person playing the role couldn't go on.
Stop.
And I was the choreographer on the production, and I got roped into going on for one performance. And that performance was just very clarifying that it was not something that I was ever interested in doing.
So that solidified it. You're like, okay, no, this is the worst.
You're like, if I ever thought I was missing this, I'm not.
Okay. Well, so of all the things that you do though, out of choreography, directing, which one is your favorite? Or do you see them all kind of as the same thing, part of the whole?
I mean, I think I see them all as part of a whole. I see them all as sort of a form of storytelling. And I think that I am always going to be a director that is interested in the way bodies move in space and how that the bodies the movement of people, how that clarifies the storytelling. But I think as I get older, I would rather direct than I would choreograph. I think that's just, as to me, as I get older, that is. And also as I get older, there was a time period where I was much more interested in like doing it all. Like I have to be in control of the whole thing. And as I get older, I am much more interested in the collaborative process and having another choreographer in the room. And so.
Well, I know for a lot of theaters, they do like when it's a one-stop shop, when the director can also choreograph, because it's
That's for sure.
Yeah.
But then you definitely want to kind of micromanage, or not micromanage, but to give away the responsibility and do less of that micromanaging as time goes on, because you're like, life is short. This is a lot.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I know you as someone in the theater who pushes boundaries in your work. And what drives you to push those boundaries? And can you give us some examples? And have you ever felt like you've pushed it a little too far? Have you ever, like, there's been an opening night and you see the reaction of the crowd and you're like, oh, fuck, I stepped in it?
Bit of a loaded question, but
Sorry, that's a
Yeah,
loaded.
I mean,
No.
we have, I mean, as artists, our job is to push boundaries, to test boundaries, to see sort of like what is possible. How do we surprise our audience? How do we excite our audience in new ways? Like the worst thing to me would be for somebody to respond to something I've created and say, that was fine.
That's true.
I
Honestly,
can't think of anything. I can't think of it. I would rather somebody hate something that I've created vehemently than say something is fine. Yeah. So I think that had there been moments where I've taken a risk and in hindsight, did it maybe not pay off? Yeah, absolutely.
What were those times?
I mean, I think that there was a I'm not going to say the title of it, but there was a world premiere musical that I did that was very sort of like cynical and a little bit, if David Mamet wrote a musical, like it was really aggressive in its toxic masculinity. When I did it, when I directed the piece, I thought it was something that I had never seen before in a musical theater setting. It really excited me. And in hindsight, I don't think I would do anything differently. I think I would still, I learned so much from that experience, but I don't know.
Well, I feel like you still don't really regret it. Yeah. Like at the end of the day, it might be like, well, that wasn't ideal, but it was still better than fine.
Exactly.
So,
and people hated it. And I would, again, prefer that to, and other people loved it. So like, I mean, I would prefer that sort of like bipolar reaction to it than a sort of middle road of it was okay.
Yeah, I've definitely kind of found, I mean, it was kind of a hard lesson for me to learn as far as, kind of being an overachiever my whole life, wanting to be, very type A, be the best at everything, to go into even just doing hospitality and restaurants, and then hearing people like not like it as far as like, we had one, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I've told you this, Todd, but we had a review after we had opened, 3 months after we had opened, and it was by a certain lady that I will name, Hannah Raskin. And she, basically caught us on a few rough, it was like a rough start. I mean, you're opening a restaurant, it's massive, there's a lot going on, but it was not that nice of a review. And I kind of had to, my immediate reaction was to first of all go on Twitter. Didn't realize at the time that Twitter was like visible to everybody. And so I posted a picture of a line out of the door for brunch the next day and said, line out the door is the best like response to a terrible review, like hashtag haters gonna hate, hashtag like all these things. And then like literally my phone started going off. People were sharing it. And it became like a news article. And I was like, okay, well, a lot of things went wrong here. But overall, it was kind of a lesson to be like, well, if somebody is like paying attention to you at all, then that means you're doing something, like that you are creating something, and it's going to be kind of a learning process, but at least you're not like never mentioned.
Right.
Like it didn't happen.
It sounds like you steer away from indifference. You don't want, you know what I mean? Opinions are,
Yeah.
you like people with opinions.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Good or
that
bad.
I think that is what, yeah, that's what drives me. That's what I think that the moments that I feel like I have failed as an artist are the moments that it feels like what I have created could evaporate and nobody would remember it.
Yeah. What do you feel like is kind of the biggest message that you're kind of trying to get out there with your productions? And what would you say is like kind of the most important one that you've had so far?
This is going to sound so corny.
I
but
can't wait.
It's the reason that I am attracted to musical theater. It is because, to me, the most important message to get across is one of love and humanity and acceptance. That's the corny.
No, I love it. So,
but that's what's important to me is creating experiences and telling stories that call upon our better angels, right? That call upon us to be better humans, better people. And so I think if I think about the projects that sort of toxic masculinity musical, where I go, I don't think that was being honest to who I am as an artist. I don't think that's being honest to the message that I want to impart into the world. And so maybe that's a reason that wasn't as successful as it might have been in some other artist's hand. So that's what's important to me.
And what do you think is like kind of the one that our show, and maybe it's hard to pinpoint just one, but one that you felt like really was got that message that you really want, the love, all that feelings across, and that you were the most proud of?
I mean, we just did a recreation of Rent at Signature that I think, particularly coming out of the pandemic, was a story about the need for community and the need about connecting and reaching out to each other. And it, I mean, is a story about love. It's, how does the lyric go? 525,600 minutes, measure in love, right? I mean, that is the message that I feel like is important in the world right now. And so I think that was very effective coming out of this pandemic.
Matthew, knowing what you know now, if you could go back and talk to 10-year-old Matthew, what would you say?
Not 5-year-old Matthew, because he had a lot to deal with already.
Exactly.
10-year-old.
Exactly. Yes. 10-year-old Matthew?
Yeah, what would you say to him?
I mean, it's interesting because 5-year-old Matthew at least
so we're always going back to 5-year-old.
No, it's interesting. 5-year-old Matthew at least had joy and wasn't quite as sort of,
don't say jaded.
No, but like 10-year-old Matthew had a lot more walls. 10-year-old Matthew was a lot more. So what I would say to 10-year-old Matthew is like find more of the joy of 5-year-old Matthew.
What were the walls from the bullying?
Yeah, I mean, I think the walls in 10-year-old Matthew were the normal walls in a gay 10-year-old boy. Like you start to like pretend to be something that you're not, so that you are more accepted by a broader group of people. You know, you start to lose sight of the little boy who dressed up as Judy Garland in his bedroom and sang Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Like that is, to me, that's like the saddest part of, and I'm interested in like, is that the same now for a young gay boy? I don't know. But I think that definitely for me, what I would want for 10-year-old Matthew is less walls and more joy and more not letting go of the 5-year-old. You know, at my job, I have a picture of myself at like the age of like 4 or 5 or something. And I have like a tie-dye rainbow colored shirt on and I have a rainbow painted on my face. And like, I frequently will look at it and just go like, don't be mean to him. Right? Like that's what,
oh my God,
you know,
ooh,
be kind to that boy, because that boy was joyful and uninhibited. And so.
Well, you mentioned changing yourself when you're trying to be something you're not. Laura, what was that? It's a code
switching.
It's called code switching.
Do you feel like you have to do that? Like that was, it seems like there was a lot that happened between 5 and 10. So did that like kind of part on you? Like that's what you needed to do?
Oh, 100%. I think that as we particularly those like middle school, high school years, life was completely code switching. It was trying to be acceptable in a heteronormative world. And I think as I get older, that becomes less important. But even now, I find myself in certain situations where I am trying to tamp down the gay, I guess, or the more flamboyant aspects of me. So,
well, it used to be for me in South Carolina, it used to be you had to code switch so you wouldn't get beat up or you wouldn't get attacked.
Yeah.
Because if you were any kind of flamboyant, you would be, beer bottles would be thrown at you from pickup trucks going by and stuff like that. So I think that code switching was, for a lot of young gay men, it was sort of survival. Or it's always survival, really. It's protection, right?
I don't know. I think I keep going back to how much you kind of, we ask you, what would you tell 10-year-old Matthew? And you go back to the 5-year-old Matthew. And I think that in a way, it's like my first instinct was like, okay, something crazy happened between 5 and 10. But at the same time, I think that is kind of like, that's your period of your life when you want to fit in. You want to be just like everybody else. No reason to have beer bottles thrown at you, but also in general, just don't want anything to be thrown at you, whether it's insults or whatever. Yeah, this is an extreme example, but in other everyday life. But one of a powerful thing that I don't even remember what book it was I was reading, but it was kind of a self-help therapeutic. Well, I think we all probably kind of dove a little too deep into that with the pandemic going on, as far as like, tell us what to do. But one of the main messages was kind of, what it was from, Todd? It was from the body keeps the score.
The body keeps the score.
So essentially that you should think about your young self and whenever you're going through a tough time and be like, would young Laura be this hard on herself? Like, how would young Laura view this entire situation? So I think that's actually incredibly healthy that you recognize that. And then you actually have a picture of yourself. And I feel like we all should take that home with us and do it ourselves.
I'm literally just thinking, like, what picture? Exactly. It's great.
Yeah. That is awesome.
Great message. That book is about how things, we talked about this yesterday with Susan, how the trauma and stress and whatever will physically manifest in your body. And it will show in different ways, whether that's, your stomach is turning or you get overheated or illness or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it could,
So,
I don't know if you've ever read that book, but you should go read it because it's really good.
It sounds great.
They should start paying me for how often I mention it. But so, it sounds like you're a very busy person, obviously. I think now, as of my latest research, you've done over 25 shows now. What are you currently working on? And what do you see in your future? Like what is next for Matthew?
Sure. So we just announced our upcoming season for Signature, which that's like a huge undertaking just to get to that moment. And so now I'm in the process of preparing that next season, whether it is the things that I am directing or it's me as a producer working with the other directors to sort of map out who the designers are going to be, who the artists involved will be. And so the next thing that I'm directing is a newer musical called No Place to Go, which is about a man who his job is getting outsourced to Mars. And it's just about unemployment and expectations around work in our country and capitalism. And anyway, so it's this really, I think, actually very profound, moving little jewel of a story. And then I do Into the Woods in the winter, which is a Sondheim musical. So I'm excited about that as well.
Yeah. So first of all, I have a question. What's the job that's being outsourced to Mars?
It's never specific in the story. So it's
really? Okay.
Yeah, you meet this character, you meet this guy who has dedicated 20 years of his life to this company, and it's about dignity of work, and it's about the ways in which we devote ourselves to work and our life to work, and then for that not to be reciprocated by our work.
Yeah.
So in the story you never really find out what his actual job is. You just know that he has dedicated his life to this company, and the company is taking his job away. And this man who's in his 50s has to figure out what the next step for his life is,
Yeah. Well, it sounds very deep and relatable, but also like one of
And
those
funny.
things where, yeah,
It's
well,
also
it should
funny.
be. Thank you. Okay. If it's a comedy, I can handle this. Cause I was about to say, if I don't know what the job is, that's the kind of story that would drive me crazy. So I'd be like, no, you tell me just on the back. You don't have to tell anybody else. Just tell me what his job is.
You just have to tell me. Sure.
Yeah. Just spill the tea to me. I won't tell anybody else.
The show is very like Severance meets Bo Burnham meets Woody Guthrie, is what I keep telling people.
Oh, wow. Well, that is quite the combo. And
there you go.
When could we see that?
That is running at Signature I believe it begins in September. So
okay. All right. So you got a little bit of time to prepare, get your tickets.
Okay, so I remember we talked about at the beginning of the podcast or before we even started, that there's a little surprise at the end. So here we go. We have a tradition on the show. We do what we call a question of the day. So we talk about a lot of heavy stuff. So just a little something a little lighter.
Sure.
So palate cleanser, if you will.
Palate cleanser, yeah. The question of the day is, who is your first celebrity crush?
It's probably Jonathan Taylor Thomas from.
Oh my gosh, that is so fun!
Mine too.
Oh my gosh, really? Yes,
he was so cute.
Like everybody always said that, and I was just like, I couldn't get past the haircut.
Or it's either that or it's Zach. What's his face?
Morris.
Saved by the Bell. Zach Morris.
Oh yeah, well, he was irresistible. That was definitely a tough choice.
Finding out that he was a natural brunette really upset me.
He's a natural brunette?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now I'm very upset.
He was on a show called Franklin and Bash, and that was his real. He was using his real hair color.
Oh yeah, I saw him in that. That's his real. Yeah. Okay. I thought they dyed his hair for that. Wow. Yeah.
No, he's not blonde.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's just ruining my childhood memory. So let's just pretend like that didn't happen. But that is just too funny just because,
Home Improvement.
They all the same.
Oh my God. That show. And remember that show?
Yeah.
And they had Wilson was the neighbor. You never saw his face. You just saw above. Oh God. I love that show.
I know. I'm going to go watch that later, I think.
There you go.
Matthew, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show today. We really appreciate you and being so vulnerable and talking about so many intense subjects. I think, for the young gay kids in America, I'm hoping that they have a better, easier time than we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on and definitely like getting that message out, continuing to get that message out with everything that you make. So I hope you know how important that is to a lot of people and that it is, I think, making change on its own. So, totally. This has been awesome. So thank you so much for coming on and come back anytime.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Have a great day.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.
What a great guy, isn't he?
Yeah. I was just so appreciative that he took time out of his extremely busy schedule to talk to us on a Sunday. When people listen to this, it'll be a Tuesday,
right?
Or any other day of the week, but it's Memorial Day weekend. So it's kind of a big deal that he took time out to talk to us. And I'm just like, I think for me, I almost felt more like it gave me more of insight into you, Todd, and your life and how, you guys what you had to go through.
It's so interesting because I don't have those conversations with other gay men.
Really?
And I don't. I really
don't. That's something
that
generally y'all don't talk about?
Not really. I mean, we sort of, if we talk about it, it's like we get a nod to it, like a comedy nod to it. Oh yeah, what, Judy Garland, but it never, of course there was, I don't know a gay man or a gay boy who wasn't bullied or who wasn't made to feel like their existence was out of the norm. And I think that his point to that's why gay men are so attracted to musical theater is because those stories focus on the person that's the outsider. Yeah. And I actually really never thought about that. And I thought that was extremely insightful. There were several things he said that I was like, mic drop moment, especially part.
It's almost like it's there, but we just didn't put it two and two together.
Exactly.
But it's I don't know. I don't think it's that. I hope it's not that obvious to everybody else that that's what's going on.
But then that musicals are predominantly written by gay Jewish white men.
Yeah, well, which is kind of
old school musicals. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It just makes me curious too. It's musicals that were written decades and decades and decades ago. Was it the same kind of people. That was their way of, they couldn't even say it out loud. So
Right.
that was like their one way to actually do it. And then have it, a lot of his obsession with Judy Garland just kind of like, I don't know, kind of it made me giggle in a way, because it's like that she was this vessel for that message while she's just, a straight woman.
Right. But
you
Judy
get to
Garland
kind of,
was married to many gay men. So,
oh, really?
yeah, Vincent Minnelli was gay. So,
Well, I knew that, but I guess I didn't. I don't know. This is all kinds of
have
like
her boyfriends. And I mean, but back then, if you were a gay man, look at Rock Hudson. He was with women. I mean, he dated women. So, yeah, I mean, but Matthew, I think it's so great that he is, I mean, to be so young and to be running that theater and directing at the level he is. I mean, you have to understand how brilliant the man is. I mean, he really, really has the accolades to back that up. But not only that, when you see his work, I was just telling you this before we started recording, when you see a production directed by Matthew Gardiner, you leave the theater thinking differently.
Yeah. Well, that's what I loved about him so much, is that it's like, we obviously could sense that there were some things where he's like, well, that wasn't received so well. But as for the most part, it's like, it's in a very intentional, like what he does, that he wants to make a difference. And, whether that's outright or just something that he's kind of got an inclination to do. But I think a big thing too with him is just he's so humble. It was just like hard to get him to even admit that he had done so much. It's like, you are a badass. And, but it was very endearing. And it kind of, I don't know, it makes it humanizes this whole thing, humanizes people so much.
Exactly.
And that's the point, right?
Yes. And it shows why people are drawn to certain careers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They did also love his answer to the question of the day.
Oh, yeah.
I shared that same sentiment. John, I had a huge conversation on Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Elijah Wood back in the day.
Oh my God. Elijah Wood? Really?
Yeah. He was
what was he on?
I wrote Elijah Wood, I can't even say this, a letter.
Oh my God. Did he respond?
And I didn't send it.
What? You kept it?
I kept it in a journal, which I recently found when I was home in Charleston.
Oh my gosh, what did it say?
It said, I would really like to go get some ice cream.
Oh my God, how old were you?
Oh God, it was whenever the movie Forever Young with Mel Gibson and Jamie Lee Curtis came out.
I was going to say, when did you first
Whenever that came out, and then also around the good time of The Good Son.
Okay.
There was a movie where Macaulay Culkin played a psychotic kid that terrorized his family. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor Thomas was like it. I liked his, I can't remember who played him now, but his older brother. Oh, that guy.
Yeah, whatever that guy's name is.
That was more your thing.
No. That's not my first celebrity crush, but I'm just saying that everybody my age, all the girls, I'm sure some of the boys were so into JTT, and that was like always the middle poster.
Part. It was the middle part.
But I couldn't with the middle part. Like I just couldn't on him. Like it's not like it was directed, like I can't do a middle part on anybody, but it was like he looked like a mushroom to me. And did you ever get Tiger Beat or whatever? Like any of those?
Tiger Beat.
It was always JTT as a poster. I'm like, guys, this is not my style. Yeah, like Tiger Beat, let's pick a new one to this month, okay?
Well, Matthew, I mean, I'm just honored that he took time to.
Do you want to hear my answer?
Yeah.
To the question of the day?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do.
All right. So it's more embarrassing than yours, I think, honestly, is Paul Walker. And he eventually is in Fast and Furious, but I made a binder of pictures cut out of Paul Walker and put them in like a scrapbook that I just had. Like what? I don't know why. I had so much free time.
Paul Walker and not Walker, Texas Ranger.
No. Paul Walker. Come on. The sexy blonde, natural blonde.
Right.
He's R.I.P. But that was my man.
That was your jam.
Yeah, that was my jam. I'm a man.
Well, my real first celebrity crush was like as a kid, but like as I got into more of a teenager, it was the guy who played the Rocketeer.
Yeah. So I have some questions What is The Rocketeer?
The Rocketeer. This is the movie. You can, if you can.
Okay.
This is the movie, and it was about a guy who strapped a rocket thing on the back of his rocket. He became a rocket.
He became a rocketeer.
Oh, wow, I sound real smart.
No, I just wish everybody. We'll post the picture of the Rocketeer on.
Yeah, we have to.
We'll post about
His
this.
name is Bill Campbell.
Okay. Well, Bill Campbell, I hope you're still out there and, kicking because
Jennifer Connelly was in this movie with him.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I can't believe I haven't seen this movie.
It was 1991. Alan Arkin, Jennifer Connelly, Paul Sorvino, Timothy Dalton.
Oh, wow. That's quite the cast.
It was Walt Disney Pictures.
So what age were you when that became your real crush?
91. I was born in 82. So
math. 9. Okay. That's,
I was 9 years old. Yeah. And I thought
just shy of that.
I was just like, God, he's so, at the time, I wasn't like, but I just like, God, he's so handsome.
He's so handsome.
But I couldn't say that back. I couldn't even admit that to myself back then, but I knew that I had an affinity for him.
So that kind of like an indicator. Like I almost wanted to ask Matthew that. Like went right to JTT, and I was like, was that the moment you knew?
Oh yeah,
like when you saw JTT.
You never. I don't even know. Maybe other gay men have a better answer for this, but you never really. With me, I mean, some people are like, I knew when I was, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know that you have an attraction, but you don't know what it is.
Okay.
And you don't know why you're not. You just assume that the reason you're not fully attracted to women or girls is that, that's normal.
Oh, that it'll come. Like you'll eventually
eventually come. Yeah. And you don't focus on the fact that you are into men until you get older and you start having urges. And then you're like, oh crap. Like
this feels faintly like,
why am I not attracted to this woman? Okay. I guess something's wrong with me. I need to force myself to fit into this world, to fit into this box. But yeah, I honestly, listen.
I just feel like both you and Matthew, I feel like are very like, I think it's very sweet and kind that you are quick to say, oh, well, I'm a cis male. Like I don't have that hard. Like so many other people have it harder, but
correct.
I think you should give yourself some credit that is the hardest time of anybody's life.
Right.
So you're dealing with a totally different layer. And that is a big deal. And I don't want to like belabor the point or say that this is the other people do have hardships. But I think that y'all kind of downplay like the impact of that has
I think
on
because because I don't know if I don't want to think that I downplay it because it was very serious, but yeah, I mean, I guess because it was so painful, Laura. And I think that, and I just felt like I was disappointing my family and my circle. You just want it to go away. You want it to just leave you. And when it doesn't leave you and you're like, oh my God, I'm stuck with this. Because honestly, that's what pisses me off so much when people are like, it is a choice. No.
Oh my God.
I would not choose this life at all.
Okay,
it would be so much easier. I would, it'd be easier to have a baby. It would be easier to get, for years it was, we couldn't even get married. We couldn't do any of that stuff. So I love when people say that. But anyway, we're digressing.
No, but I do want to say that I think that I'm thank you for being open about that because sure. I think that this is probably one of the first real kind of conversations we've had about that. And I just
it is. It's a moment. I mean, it's interesting to talk about it with another gay man in the arts in the same field who decided not to go the performer route and has honed the hardships and stuff and put it into his work. Because I do that with my sense memory stuff when I'm doing a role or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I think that I'm going to start having more of these conversations with my other gay friends because we just don't talk about it. And I think that what it did for me today was a little healing for me hearing his.
Good. Okay.
It's weird, like hearing another gay man say that he went through the same thing I went through, like a bullying because you were who you are. There's something about it that is comforting. Like we were both like, you know what I'm saying? Like it was
validating. I mean, too, that it wasn't just you. And
Right.
and because I'm sure at that moment you feel like this is just me. I'm all alone in this. It's like, I don't know. I want to take 5-year-old Todd and I want to hug him so tight.
Well, 5-year-old Matthew really was,
Yeah, he's
he
coming
was
out
sure
everywhere.
of himself.
So
I love that he has a picture of
I know.
himself with a rainbow on his shirt and a rainbow on his face at his office. I think that is what a great idea. What a great reminder that,
maybe in solidarity,
we
should, in solidarity, maybe we should change our profile pictures to our 5-year-old selves for a little bit, just to remind ourselves.
I think so. I think we should do that.
Yeah, it was a very powerful. I think there's a lot of kudos to Matthew. He's figured it out. But no, I think that in general that it was a very brave kind of message. And I know we've talked about a lot of deep stuff on here. And one of the things that we were kind of talking about before this was, well, have we kind of everybody just accepts the gay people now and it's all over? It's like
and I also can't imagine what it's like for lesbians because the pressure that's put on women in this world, but then when you can't fit in with the girls at the salon saying, "Oh, my husband, my boyfriend, my da 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 da," back then, as I'm saying, now it's a lot more. I'm sure it's a different ball game, but I mean, I can't imagine what it was like for lesbians growing up when I was younger, because I think women have it hard enough as it is.
So that's why I love you that you recognize that.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I just think that is. I would love to. I don't think we've had a lesbian on this program up to this point.
Haven't.
I think it would be great to talk to someone who is lesbian, and because I would really love to hear if they were bullied by other women.
Yeah. I mean,
is there something there? Because if it is, I don't really hear women talking about it. I don't hear my lesbian.
It's not a very common, I feel like even growing up, it wasn't, you never even thought about it. Like, it wasn't like I think in a way, as a child, when same age that you were kind of talking about, of like, well, you knew something is different, but you just thought it would, go away. I mean, I think women in general, or girls, now I feel like I'm speaking for all women, and I don't like that, but I felt like that those urges or whatever came a little bit later than like for most boys. So you did kind of just depend on because sometimes you would look at JTT and be like, okay, well, he couldn't even lift a large box and I'm going to need more. So it's like you finally discover men at some point and you're like, oh, this is what I was looking for. And I think there's a little bit of that with when I was growing up, as far as the image of women and what they should be when I was younger was be a stick. And so you just kind of hoped and prayed that later on in life that boys would start to like you, even though you weren't a stick. So it's, we all got our struggles, but I'm just really appreciate you kind of sharing that.
Of course.
And I love you.
I love you too. Matthew, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, it was wonderful. All right. We'll talk to you next time, guys. Bye.